My name is aaKohn, and I'm going to be talking today about what we're calling interactive video. And a little bit of background. By training, I'm a neuroscientist, but for the last 20 years, we have been making films and teaching. And what you're going to hear about today is sort of the marriage of those two things. And how do we use film, video, make it interactive, and maximize long-term learning. And it's I think there's some enormous power here. Give you the background. The first films we make films for McGraw-Hill and Cengage, and for Prentice Hall, actually, so the three major college publishers. They are teaching a course in abnormal psychology, and they have worked with us. 20 years ago, they worked with us just to make films that would humanize the topic of psychopathology. So rather than just hearing about a person with schizophrenia, we would create films which profiled them in a really personal way, where we talk with them and we try to see the world through their eyes. And you watch a 10-minute film, and you see a profile. If you've ever seen a film, if you ever had an abnormal psychology class and saw a mental illness film, we probably made it. And that's, I guess, 25 years ago now. And then what we tried to evolve from there was, as internet, CD-ROM, and then internet delivery became possible, we began to say, well, video is great. Video is a really good way to capture human energy and emotion. The problem with video is that it's one way. And a one-way communication leaves the learner passive and unengaged. And what we're trying to do is, especially in a topic like mental illness, how can I make that material interactive? How can I get the student actually thinking about and participating in that experience? And we have, over the years, come up with a number of solutions. And I'm going to try to, give you the background on what we've been able to do. And when you see that, we will then extend that to figure out how, within a corporate training environment, we can take those same lessons and make your training more effective and more engaging. So, for example, in the mental illness project, we'd made a series of films. These were from McGraw-Hill. And they said we wanted interactive, and we built a product where we had filmed. Imagine we'll talk about Becky. Becky has borderline personality disorder. Very controversial disorder, probably a sexist disorder, probably a number of things that make it really provocative. These people are not liked. People who have this diagnosis are often not well liked, and certainly not well understood. And so we needed to create a situation where I wanted my student, my abnormal psychology student, to be able to come in there, not know the diagnosis ahead of time, ask the right questions, play the role of the therapist. So she actually goes in, he or she, the student actually goes in and asks a set of differential questions, gets answers to it, makes a diagnosis, and then based on the diagnosis comes up with a prescriptive plan of how to treat this person as if a therapist were actually doing the treatment. It's an utterly cool challenge, because in abnormal psychology, that is, we want the student to commiserate and to understand the nature of the disorder. But we also, our goal is to give them the ability to recognize that disorder and to come up with an appropriate prescriptive treatment, and not just on paper, but actively thinking and engaging and interacting with that learner. That was the body of stuff that we were doing. So I'm going to do this in parallel. And I've never tried this before, but we're going to do it here. Give me a challenge. I want somebody in the audience to think of an example of a rich training that you want to experience, that you need to provide to your employees. What is it? If it's simply, the more challenging the problem, the better. Does somebody have a problem that they think could be solved with video? And describe for me the problem. And we'll try to do it on the fly. Nobody. There we have one person in the whole place who has a problem. Thank goodness. This is Ruth. Tell us about yourself and what your problem is.
So I'm in sales training in a pharmaceutical firm. And salespeople very often work individually. They work individually a lot. They're incentivized on an individual basis. But we want to move them into more of a matrix team model where they're really collaborating with matrix team members around them, which means that they have to think about things like updating each other when things happen with a customer, keeping each other apprised of what issues there are in the customer account, and really kind of change the whole way that they go about their business.
Okay. Very good. Which pharmaceutical? Otska. Okay. I won't mention the fact that we trained for Bristol Myers, BMS. So I won't mention that. Are they a partner? Okay, so that challenge is a huge one. And the pharmaceutical industry has special problems about, if you think the government tries to keep secrets, you should see, I mean, the pharmaceutical industry is very, very, very carefully regulated. And so we have that additional problem. How do we then create an environment where we have them communicating with each other, but if they say the wrong thing, it's discoverable, and it's a really interesting challenge of how to train in that industry. Different challenges, different industries. So I'm going to use that one in parallel. As I walk through today's session, I'm going to try, what the heck, to show how we might approach solving that problem using interactive video. The key, it seems to me, video is not perfect. But when we look at the modal form of training today, the metaphor of current training is you take a book, you summarize the book, you take the print from the book and put it on a page, and then you add the next button. The interaction consists of clicking the next button, or occasionally dragging and dropping something and advancing it. The point here is, in the current world of training, the metaphor is based on the book. It's a printed page, and then you flip the page. Most of what we end up producing in the world today is that type of thing where you get a discrete chunk of knowledge, then you pass to the next discrete chunk of knowledge. It's the page metaphor. When you go to video, the entire metaphor changes. It is not a temporal chunk of, it's not a structured chunk of knowledge and then on to the next one. With video, we're going to be doing something very different. We're going to be allowing a free flow of information with all the human emotions and energies attached to it. So you're going to get enormous power when you go to video. We've done a series of experiments looking at why video matters. So for example, if you measure how much information, read a paragraph, how much more information does the person retain if rather than reading it themselves, they have it read to them? It's about double. And the more complex the material and the lower the reading ability of your reader, of your learner, the more video is important. So as complexity goes up or as capabilities go down, text is conspicuously the wrong answer. Consider, for example, what it's like to read a paragraph or a page of Shakespeare versus having a person who is a skilled performer perform it for you. And when you hear it pronounced well, the meaning just flows over you and you go, oh my God, that is gorgeous. I got none of it when I read it. And so there's huge power in having a really, really good speaker presenting it to you that doubles the material. Go to video when you have complex material that has a real human component, or if your students are not terribly good readers. All of those are really, really good excuses to go to video. If you need another excuse to go to video, another message is it is tons cheaper to produce a video-based lesson than to produce a text-based lesson. And the reason is, right now, instructional designers, our role is often go talk to a subject matter expert. Drain everything out of their head that you can. Write it down. Try to make it look nice. Give it back to the subject matter expert. Ask them if you got it right. They calculate. It's this iterative process. And then you try to decorate the pages with nice illustrations and add the next button. It's poor teaching, and we know the number of hours it takes to develop it. What we have had substantially more luck with, in terms of financially, it's more cost effective, is if you find an expert, first if they have any presentation skills themselves, if they have any kind of passion for what they're doing, you put them in front of a video camera and let them talk. If you need to edit it out, that's fine. You do some trimming and editing, that's great. But our company can make a 15-minute lesson about half the price of what it costs to make a 15-minute Captivate lesson. And it's a lot better. So another justification for using video is cost. And I think it's better, and I think it is less costly to be doing video. But again, the problem with video is it encourages passivity. It's fine if you're watching House of Cards and you just want to sit back with a glass of wine and watch a TV show. You can be utterly passive. I don't want that when I'm training a group of sales reps in the pharmaceutical industry. I need them actively engaged. I need them thinking about how this is going to help them solve problems. I need to be polling them. I need to be talking with them. They need to be talking with each other. They got to have access to a coach. That kind of engagement, video can't do. And that's the one thing that Captivate and Articulate and all those good things can do, is they can create that interactive environment, but it doesn't have the human component. It's too often text-based. So what I want to try to do is to show you some of the solutions we've come to in what we're calling interactive video. This is a first look at it, and I will walk you through some of the things we do, and you can think about ways you can use some of these principles as you develop your own content using whatever tools you might want to use. How are we going to do this? So our procedure, this is the final learning environment. And we've got a talent here, a subject matter expert, a synchronized transcript. As she's speaking, there's a transcript over here, which wherever it is she's speaking, you see that sentence highlighted here. You can click, of course, on a transcript and navigate to it. So we see a synchronized transcript. Student can bring out a highlighter pen in the lecture, highlight it, annotate it, so it becomes that kind of a richer environment. We're going to have all kinds of learning links built into it. Let's go through this. How do you produce it? Put it in front of a green screen. Anybody knows how? I think at DevCon we're going to be doing a whole session on actually producing video. This one is more about how the value educationally. DevCon in Vegas, we're going to be doing a whole session actually producing that video. Shoot them in front of a green screen, throw in a background, throw in an LCD screen. This work is not rocket science. If you attend one of our video production seminars, we have people in 2 8-hour days utterly capable of making a video that looks like that. Now, let's see if after you have the video, the key is to make that video interactive by adding all kinds of learning objectives and learning links and resources, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do that, how to make your video richer and more effective. All right. The device I'm going to use to go through this, given it's that time of year, for those of you who care about this kind of thing, it is that time of year. There are games going on right now as I'm speaking. I'm missing a game I really want to see. But it's okay. I'll use a basketball metaphor to communicate these ideas. So, there are 8 things that interactive video allows us to do, and we're going to do a little contest in here as a way of thinking about these things to figure out. I'll stay in the lights. Sorry, let me stay in the lights there. The critical factors that define interactive learning and make it effective. Learning styles, I'm going to go through each of these. Immersive learning, social learning, cognitive heuristics, follow-up training, interactive learning, incentive system, and a skilled teacher. We're going to have a little contest here, both to understand these things and then to figure out amongst ourselves what we think is the most important. So we set up the brackets. Get it right. That's right. It's worth $1 billion if you get this right. And we're going to have contests here. And we're going to set up a contest between what's more important, for example, learning styles or immersive learning, and we'll vote. But let's talk about these things as we move forward. First off, learning styles. What we're doing, and with you make video and you make that video interactive, it has the capacity to appeal to a whole variety of different learning styles. In this particular case, the person here, you can get a video, a person can sit back, listen, watch the video, the human component. But another advantage, if the person's focus is instead to be able to attend mostly to the text, that's available to them. A word here, there's often a discussion, should you have a synchronized text along with a video? The evidence suggests if it is a verbatim transcript, i.e., that is, it's identical to the words being used in the transcript, in being spoken, it is supportive and contributes to retention. If it is a summary, a non-verbatim transcript over here, which gives a somewhat different iteration, the person spends all their time trying to reconcile the video with the text, and retention goes way down. So if you're going to provide, if you're going to try to accommodate to different learning styles, and if you're going to provide text, it must be verbatim. The person can go, if the person in our environment, if they go to the outline, it automatically stops the video presentation. Because I know my data suggests that, excuse me, if they're looking at the outline, they cannot be hearing the transcript effect, the performance. Therefore, we separate those two things. So learning styles is an advantage when you go to interactive video. You accommodate to different kinds of people, different kinds of learners, is a big advantage. So the video, you can watch the whole video full screen if you don't want to. My staff sarcastically calls this view, which I like, the over 40 view. Whatever. They prefer this view. There's all kinds of things going on. There's all kinds of, it's much more Facebook-y. And there's a ton of stuff, and you can be interacting with it in a whole bunch of different ways. I prefer a cleaner look. Now, but it's capable of accommodating to different learning styles, and that's a huge advantage. The synchronized transcript, you can, so this is jumping you to the full screen mode and so forth. All right. That's the first advantage. So one thing, how important is learning styles versus immersive learning? Our goal in creating interactive video is to take a live presentation, an excellent live presentation, and make it much better than live. And this is the challenge I would give to you guys. Take a live presentation and make it better than live. Make it available. First off, it's available asynchronously, right? That's a huge advantage. It's also going to be the case that I want my learner to feel like they're in a place, they're in an actual seminar where there's a live, it's not live, it's all recorded, but I want them to feel like it's a live seminar. And I'm going to toss all kinds of things in there. Okay, so you can highlight the transcript just like you could at a live presentation. Or you can brand it around, or you can bring in a classmate asking questions. I want my learner to feel entirely immersed. I want them to have the illusion that they're inside of a live presentation. So of the two that we just talked about now, immersive learning versus learning style, which of the two, if your goal is to measure the effectiveness, to improve the effectiveness of training, which is more important, learning style or immersive learning? How many people think learning style is the more important of the two? How many people think immersive learning is more important? Okay, immersive learning by a strong majority is into the second round, and we'll compete with the winner of the following. So we have, I wrote it down there. So immersive learning is more important. They're all important, by the way. There's going to be 8. They're all important. And the contest, as we get further into it, will get more and more difficult. Social learning. In our interactive video, this is one of my favorite examples, working with a big retailer at the returns desk. The returns desk is, you bring things back to the store and you get your money back. The returns desk, for those of you not in retail, you may not realize how absolutely critical the returns desk is to the success of an organization. And it is both a place where they can lose money because people are ripping off the system, but they can also alienate a client. So the returns desk is a huge pain point for most organizations. So they bring us in and say, we want to train our employees to be better at the returns desk. Now, I say, oh, well, we have a group of experts at our company and we can tell you what to say. And I said, no. We're a really big company. We have all the expertise. We just need to teach it. So they send me to Toledo, Ohio, where we film Leo, who's an associate manager, black guy, fantastic energy, awesome. And he says, and he's teaching the people the technique in video, right? Now, one thing you could do with video is just show a videotape. We're going to make it interactive. So Leo gets in front of the camera, and he says, man, when I got a grumpy customer at the returns desk, I do 3 things, man. I do 1, and he explains it, 2, 3. This is what I do, man. And he looks at the camera with this huge smile and says, what do you do? What's your best idea? Well, I got an associate in California who picks, her ears perk up, she types in her answer. The next day, an associate in Michigan types in his answer, and the day after that, an associate in New York types in hers. And when she types in her answer, she sees Michigan, she sees California, and they're talking to each other. You read each other's, you comment on each other's suggestions, you vote them up and down. Suddenly, I am creating a community of 20-year-olds who are talking to each other about best practices. And they're asking, can I go back to that e-learning lesson because I'm in the middle of a discussion with a person from California. We are creating a community in which training is often thought to be top-down. The corporate wise people will tell the minions what to do. And that's true. The corporate has a lot of expertise and wisdom, and there should be expertise. There's a place for expertise. But training doesn't just go top-down. It also goes this way, where they train each other. And what this retailer is discovering, training goes this way. It goes back from bottom up. And mind you, we've got thousands of young people, employees, taking this training, making their ideas known, vetting each other's ideas, and they get votes, right? So at the end of the day, the best practices float up to the top, and corporate comes along and skims them off and learns a ton. Social learning, and I'll make a passionate case, I hope, for all 8 of these. Social learning is incredibly potentially useful. The provost, I'm a university professor, my provost is always saying, well, Art, you teach neuroanatomy, why don't we put it online and have a discussion forum? You don't have to give lectures or anything, we'll just have a discussion forum. And I said to him, Paul, I can't put a group of 19-year-olds in a room to discuss neuroanatomy. They don't know anything. They don't. Who are we pretending? You know, in some areas of psychology, we can pretend they know something, but they don't know anything about neuroanatomy. And to simply put them into a room without expert advice is meaningless. So social learning is not a panacea. But if you combine it with expert advice, give them the core content that they want, and then let them massage it, that's where you get enormous value. Enormous power. And this is, if you're doing a leadership or a mentoring program where you have leaders on video, talking to 2 gentlemen in the back, we got to leverage the social stuff. Because one way to teach is to provide all the expert knowledge. But if you build it, they will come. But if you let them help build it, they'll stay. And they'll learn a lot more. Social learning, when used appropriately in an interactive video environment, can be really, really helpful. These are some examples of the kind of questions and answers that we provide. And people, why do you think work safety standards are important? People can type in their answer, they submit it, they see other people's answers, they can add comments and so forth, they can go into discussion forums, and they can work together to vet best answers. Now, this is competing with another value. And for those who have attended any of my, I did a couple other sessions, cognitive heuristic cognitive means mental. A heuristic is a technique, a shortcut that your brain uses to process information. And so, for example, if you're going to go buy detergent at the store, it's not a rational process. You use instead heuristics or mental shortcuts that help you to make that decision more effectively. We are going to try to import all of those cognitive heuristics into our trainings. And when you make interactive anything, you need to try to exploit the way the brain works. Pardon, if you were at the previous session, pardon the repeat of this example. But if a person is building a chair, and if you're an architect or an engineer and you're building a chair, you need to study the ergonomics of the person. Ergonomics refers to the human factors in a design decision. So if you're going to build a chair, you want that chair to be superb, and therefore, you should study the shape of the human butt. You should study the curvature of the human spine so that when you build this chair, that chair is compatible with a real human being who's going to sit in it. And I've seen some of these really fancy chairs, specifically in France, which are just gorgeous, but they're awful to sit in. Well, I've taken some e-learning courses that are lovely, and there's things flashing and spinning and all that, but it has absolutely no semblance of any consciousness about how the human brain actually operates. So we did a demonstration of the previous one. Who was here in the last session? Okay, I have a question for you. We did a little exercise in there just for fun. I said, please don't remember any of the following. But let's just see how many people remember this. A television actor. Bart Simpson. A color. A direction. Okay, we're just showing off at this point. But I can do that demonstration. So what we did was I just gave them a series of things to remember. And we did 16. I'm guessing I could go through all 16. They'll know all 16 with no memory effort. None. Because we understand the way the brain works. We understand the nature of activational memory and how do you encode information so that people are likely to remember it long term. An emotion? Jealousy. Good. So it's good. Cognitive heuristics, if you build your learning in ways that are incompatible with the way people learn, I promise they will forget. And if you have an understanding of the way cognition works and the human brain works, you can build content that has the capacity to sustain itself over time. Now, this is just an example of cognitive heuristics. Know thy brain. Know thy brain. The research suggests that using a metaphor causes clients to remember with blank times greater accuracy. Now, this technique, this doesn't seem like, oh, come on, team. This simple quiz question may not at first blush seem like it does much. Okay. But the way the brain works, if you provide it information and then move on and provide it some more information and then some more, the brain concludes from that, since it's getting more and more information and not had retrieval opportunities, that that information is probably unimportant, move on to the next bit. We had a whole session, almost half the session on this topic. In order to get the brain to remember things, you have to give the brain opportunities to retrieve those items. The more often it retrieves it in the hours and days after training, the more likely it is they will remember it indefinitely. There's a whole stuff. So I'm a columnist now for the Guild in their magazine. We're going to do, this is all we do. We spend a ton of time talking about cognitive heuristics and how to maximize those for long-term retention. Here's another heuristic we do in our interactive video. You're watching this guy. This guy is we do all the training for American Psychological Association. This guy is a fantastic therapist dealing with difficult people coping with difficult situations. In the middle of his lecture, Every once in a while, a classmate raises her hand. And you can see her question is there. Do your ideas also apply to other types of losses? Now, I feel like I'm watching Bob Niemeyer give this lecture, and the role of journaling, he's talking about it. All of a sudden, I'm really into it because it's like a live lecture. A classmate raises her hand and asks a question. It's about a digression. It's not a key concept, but it's of interest to about 10% of my audience. And so, in the middle of this interactive lesson, she raises her hand and asks the question. If you're interested in your classmate's question, click on her. Bob stops his lecture and answers the question. If you're uninterested in your classmate's question, you can ignore it, and the lecture continues. It's an absolutely, I want you to take a live lecture, and I want you to make it better than live. And one way to do that is when you have information that is not essential to every learner, it's important to a subset of them. What we end up doing in most text-based solutions is if there's a detail that's of interest to 10% of the people, throw it in. And there's a detail of interest to another 10%, throw it in. And what you do is now you've just buried 80% of the people being forced to look at content in which they have no interest. And so what we've been able to do in a truly interactive video environment is to create these digression opportunities which are then accessible to those people for whom it's relevant. Questions? I'm blabbing. I'm not doing the interactive thing, so I'm failing at my own spirit here. Questions or comments? Thank you. Bingo. That's it. So as we are filming the instructor, we are trying to take on the role of a potential student, think like a student, and then when its presentation is over, we then follow it with a series of questions that are typical of those questions which would be asked by a real student. Good. Other questions? Thank you. Way in the back. What we do, we have, so the question was what's the delivery platform? We have a very different metaphor. So this is stuff we have developed. All of our video lives on a video server. Then everything else that makes it interactive television is served up out of a live database. So unlike Captivate or Articulate, one of those, what you do is essentially you write your learning, and then you compile it into kind of a self-contained module. What we do instead is we take all of our materials, put them in a database, so that at runtime, it says, oh, it's Bristol Myers Squibb, it's Joanne in the sales department, she needs this training with this customization, and we create on the fly a customized learning experience for Joanne at BMS, and it's created on the fly out of a database. And we have developed a delivery tool then, which goes in and grabs all those pieces of information and throws them into the interactive video. So we work with companies. We built 1,000 courses off the shelf, and then we work with all kinds of companies to build custom material for them. It's cool because we just got off with Genentech, who is like really my favorite company ever to work with. They're really bright. And we built for them a little video studio. They put their talent in the video studio. We taught them how to film their talent. They film them all. Then they work with us, and we make their videos interactive television. All right. So we've got social learning and cognitive heuristics. I hate this game. This is like, putting Duke against Kansas in the first round. But they're all important. All 8 of these are important. Which is more important for the efficacy of your training? Social learning or cognitive heuristics? How many people think social learning is more important? And how many think cognitive heuristics? I'm with you. Okay, so the cognitive heuristics moves forward. And I'm with you, although I gotta hate to see social learning go out in the first round. Because I'm telling you, you will get so much bang, as we say goodbye to social learning. You get so much bang for it. It's the Kevin Costner line, if you build it, they will come. But the second part is let them build it. with supervision and oversight, and they will create an environment that they care about. And that can easily be woven into it. Is that a comment back there? Yes, sir. It's a really, really good. I will swipe that example. The comment was a really good example of the nature of social learning and the power of it would be Amazon and the user reviews. And I go there all the time. And it's just, you're not going to trust every review, but you read enough of them, you get a consensus, and it's really a useful tool. That kind of power you need to have in your environment, team. You absolutely have to exploit it. We struggle with certain pharmaceuticals, as I go back to the pharmaceutical, because if one sales rep says to another sales rep, hey, I just thought of this really clever way. I encourage the doctor to use this drug for this illness. That discussion, that conversation, if there is a lawsuit against that company, that conversation is discoverable and can be brought into court. And so pharmaceuticals, I also work for a big missile maker company. They make the missiles with which we give people freedom. We send these missiles, we blow them up, and then they become free. Little politics slipping in, sorry. But they have the same kind of restrictions. They're extremely careful about who's allowed to talk to who and will the courts get access to this material. So social learning has its issues, and we have to be careful with it. Now, follow-up training. Oh, gosh. Okay, so let me just do this very quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, what percent, those of you who were here last time, what percent of forgetting, what percent of material do you forget in 24 hours? 70%. I will repeat that. After one day, your learners will forget 70% of what you taught them. Within 1 week, they will forget 90% of what you taught them. Hell, within an hour, they lose half. It should be a profoundly disturbing number to you because you work your buns off to create fantastic training within whatever tool you want. And as soon as they are gone an hour, half of it's gone, and when they're gone for a day, 70% is gone. What are we doing? And the metaphor that I will use is it's like taking gasoline and pumping it into a gas tank, and there's a hole in the bottom of the tank. And as you drive away, it's pouring out. But you just keep going, and you complain about the low mileage you're getting. So you say, geez, this gasoline is lousy. I'm getting terrible mileage. I'll use high-octane fuel from now on. And so on it goes. And we work harder and harder to make our training better and better, and the human brain forgets at a precipitous rate. It just does. And that's a good thing. The brain should forget. It is adaptive and appropriate. Let me explain what I mean. Where are your car keys right now? Okay, they're in your purse at the hotel room. About this time last week, where were your keys? You sure? Cool. So she's using a heuristic device because almost always on Wednesdays. Is it possible that's not true? Yeah. The point that I'm going for is there are things good to remember. It makes sense to remember where you put things or your glasses are put. And there are things that are remembered for very short windows of time, and that's good. And then what your brain wants to do is when that information is no longer useful, purge it. If something's not useful, purge it. That's the way the brain is designed to work. You have such an inundation of information. Don't try to remember everything. Remember only those things which are useful in the short or the medium or the long term. And if something is not being used, if it is not being accessed, delete it. And that is an adaptive and an appropriate and a healthy behavior for your brain. And it's what keeps you able to cope with your world, because you shouldn't remember everything, because it creates interference. With that in mind, then, there is a technology developed out of the University WashU in St. Louis, a guy named Roediger. We know that the forgetting curve is really dramatic. However, if we provide booster experiences, quizzes, interactions, in the hours and days following training, you can change the shape of the forgetting curve. I'll say it again. If you provide the person with boosters or retrieval opportunities in the hours and the days after training, they are going to be much more likely to remember the information. And you need to find some way. The argument that I will make is it's more important what you do after training than what you do during training. Booster the information. Cause the person to have to retrieve that information half a dozen times over the next month. Space them out. There's a whole technology to it. This is part of what we talked about in the previous session. And you're free to reach out to me. We've got a whole literature, and actually I'm writing an article for the e-learning guild about it right now. Or actually I'm not writing, but I should be. So you must booster. If you come away with no other message from this session, you will forget 70% of what I am saying by tomorrow. 90% in a week, that's the way your brain works. If you want to remember it, you need to be boosted. You need to have retrieval opportunities over the next week. If you have that, your brain will keep it. If you don't, your brain will purge it, and it's flushed and gone. You must booster. Whole bunch of technologies. We sell a technology to do it. There's other ways you can boost information, but it's a hugely beneficial way, and the lack of it will lead to a huge loss of income. $60 billion a year Americans spend on training. 90% is gone in a week. So that's going to compete with interactive learning. Inside of our interactive video environment, all kinds of stuff. We can ask a poll. You got to get people interacting, doing things. And I want them doing things that are cognitively active. I do not want them dragging and dropping. Sometimes clicking the next button is as interactive as it gets. That does not interaction make. What I want is something which at least forces a cognitive engagement. In this case, in your opinion, how real is the threat of workplace violence in your workplace? Not a chance, only remotely possible, could certainly happen, or very likely. Now, a student is taking this e-learning training on violence in the workplace, and now I've asked them a question. I've said, in your opinion, and they sit up straight. We watch people take these lessons. All of a sudden, they sit up straight. Ooh, they want my opinion. They respond to this poll question, and they immediately get live data back, which is data generated by their classmates commenting on what people perceive to be the likelihood of violence in the workplace. And then if they're really curious, we have a gender button, which when you click that, you sort by gender. And gee, do women and men think that violence is equally likely? How do men and women compare? How cool. And suddenly, what's valuable here is I've got the student thinking about the content. I don't have them going next, 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 next. I'm getting them, and that's the key to interactivity. Interactivity is salient and valuable to the extent that the person is cognitively engaged. And a next button is not interaction. A interaction is cognitive involvement, thinking, caring, emotions. That kind of stuff is the measure of long-term learning. So what's more important? A, follow-up training, or B, interactive learning? How many people think it's A, follow-up training, B, interactive learning? Yeah, so we're going with A, but especially in a session called interactive video, they're all important. But the follow-up training is, you're going to get your bang for the buck, guys. If you want to go home and double the long-term retention of your corporate training and get some real behavior transfer, it's all about boostering. The interactive stuff is on the training end. It's on the front end when you're actually creating your materials, find ways to generate active, deep-level processing. I wish I could do that demo. We have a great demonstration on deep level processing. It might have gotten a few more votes for interactive learning, but there's just not enough time. It's really important to make, and when you put your interactions in, but make sure those interactions stay cognitively engaging. Okay, incentivized learning. This is great fun. I said last time I'm old enough and lucky enough to have studied with a psychologist named B.F. Skinner. And Fred Skinner was a student, the founder of behaviorism, modern behaviorism anyway. And what we talk about a lot, what we care about a ton is how do you present rewards in order to incentivize behavior? One of the problems, okay, we're going to send out these boosters, right? So my company, we send out, you take a training on consensus leadership. 2 days later, we're going to send you a little booster question. Hey, according to that, it shows up in your iPhone or whatever your phone is, shows up and, oh, okay, you answer a question. That process of looking at a question and answering it, that boostering, does enormous amounts of good for generating retention. Problem is, how do you get people to do it, to participate? We have some organizations where we get an 80 to 90% compliance. Got an email today, companies getting about 40% compliance where they're actually doing the boosters. So we have for them a lovely program. And hopefully this same logic can apply to the world that you guys work in. I've got a booster question arrives on my phone. I should have a couple actually, because I boost everything I do, by the way. From now on, if you take all the textbooks published by Cengage Publishing. I think this is the coolest thing. You open up a textbook, at the end of the chapter is going to be a QR code. Scan it with your cell phone. We will automatically, using our program, send you quiz questions over the following hours and days up till your exam. And it's just, thank you, I think it is cool, and it's just so commonsensical. We know that if you read, it will fade. So we just add a little QR code. If the kid is clever enough, they do that for a 5-second or a 10-second price of answering a quick question during the day. It's going to dramatically improve your memory. If they don't want to participate, here's what we do. So you get this thing, and we tell them, listen, every time we have them sign up for an Amazon credit card, we strongly encourage them to do that in somebody else's name. For example, sign it up for your kid. I have a 12-year-old son. And every time I answer a booster question, 50 cents gets added to his Amazon card. Our system, we have a handshake, our product handshakes with Amazon, right? And so when Joe Smith finishes it, then Mary Smith gets 50 cents of credit on her Amazon card. Guess what happens when I come home in the afternoon? Hey, Dad, did you get any boosters today? And it's such a kick for me. I don't need the 50 cents, okay? But my kid gets a kick out of it, and I say, well, just a minute here. And he's watching over my shoulder, hoping I get the answer right. Suddenly, we have created an incentive system which costs the company very little for the return on that investment to get a person actively engaged and to give a rip about the training for 50 cents or a total like $4 over a whole training. Because we'll do one on consensus leadership and there might be 8 different booster questions, each worth 50 cents. If I can tell the company, listen, for an extra few bucks, I'm going to make this retained and I'm going to get this person engaged, dramatic return on investment. Incentivize people. Karl Marx was right? Money is, that's kind of the core of it. And if you can find ways to incentivize, build it right into your system. There's a whole bunch of technologies using Amazon and things like that to really get people engaged more. And a skilled teacher. And this is one of the real values of interactive video. There is, whatever skills I have as a teacher go to my father. The credit goes to my father and goes to a professor named Max Brill, who taught me something about the lack of pretense and the responsibility we have to be sensitive and listening to our audience, engaging your audience and paying attention. I love to teach. And we think we can take, if you have within your organization a skilled teacher, just a good communicator, put them on video. It is a crime to take the information out of them and give it to the world in print. Human beings have so much passion and energy and the nuance and the lilt to the voice and all of those wonderful things from which we gain so much. To distill that and put it on print is a crime. So we do it either of two ways we recommend. I did on my pre-con session, I showed the folks we have a Latino fellow who comes on and tells us about what a good clerk was at this big retail store, because he walked in and the clerk took such good care of his grandmother. And my grandmother was so happy, and there's a tear in his eye, and he talked about how wonderful it was how they dealt with him. He's an actor. Fantastic. We did a survey. People had thought that he was a subject matter expert speaking from the heart. He was a professional actor who's superb. Find your content. Find your message. Work it. Distill it. And then if you don't have a SME with passion, get an actor. They'll do it for you. And they can provide convincing presentations that they care about this material and that it's interesting and important. And we have all kinds of things on our website. We're kind of a combination video house and then a interactive media house as well. So we've got stuff. If you're interested, you can contact me. We'll tell you give you access to what we think you need to build a studio. You can build a first-rate green screen studio right now. First rate. Everything you need for about $5,000. If you need to do it on the cheap, you can get it down to $2,000. But if you want a full-out production studio, you need 10 by 10 room and about $5,000 worth of equipment. And you can build an entirely sufficient, you need a camera, teleprompter, a few lights, a green screen, nice microphone. And we've got that list of all the materials that you might need, which is our recommendation, which cameras are best for different purposes and so forth. All right. No. Skilled teacher. We have terrific. We've built 1,000 courses on everything from HR to finance. We make finance interesting. This is God's truth. I took in college, I took a course on finance, which I think is one of the world's worst topics, and it was awesome. And I took a course the same semester on sex from a lousy teacher, and it was boring. I don't know how she did it, but she made sex boring. And we work really hard. If you find the right human beings to talk, any and every topic can be made terrific. So what's more important? Incentivized learning or having a skilled teacher? This is a tough one. I can't predict this one. How many people think incentivized learning is more important? How many people think skilled teacher? Yeah, probably. I really struggle. We know who wins. So skilled teacher wins. I think I vote the other way on this one, but I'm not sure. All right, we move on to our final four. Who's in the first round? You guys I didn't keep track well. Who is in the first round of the immersive learning versus cognitive heuristics? So learning styles is a way of reviewing. People have different ways of learning. You need to address each of those different ways within your interactive video environment. That's one person in the final four here. The second competitor is cognitive heuristics, teaching in a way that's compatible with the way the brain really works. How many people think the more important of the two is immersive learning? How many people think it's cognitive heuristics? Cognitive heuristics is in the final. My second pair, follow-up training, boostering versus skilled. So what's more important? I tell you, it gets painful here at the end. Is it more important that you reinforce your message afterward, or that your message has a primarily good teacher? How many people would vote for boostering? How many people vote for skilled teacher? I'm going to give in a very close contest to booster. That was a close one. They're all really important. And which puts us into the finals again, of course. It's probably a Monday night. And hopefully Duke is in the game, but they're not in this game. The finals here is between cognitive heuristics, teaching in a way that you know is compatible with the brain, the way the brain works, versus boostering and reinforcing. So is it more important to understand and to teach in ways compatible with the brain, or is it more important to booster? How many people think the brain, teaching the way the brain works is more important? How many people think boostering is more important? I think boostering got it, although we may have to go into overtime on that one. These things all matter a ton. You're going to get so much more power. Again, if you need some help, let me know. I can get you some materials to help you build a video studio. It is, in the long run, more effective, especially if you make it interactive, and it's cheaper. You can build these things really quick, and your role as an instructor, designer, does not stop. It evolves. And you will develop skills as a director and a skill as a producer, as opposed to being a person working with text in an environment. Let's go about 1 more minute. We build all kinds of custom stuff. Here's if you want to learn more. These are the slides I wanted you to see. If you want to learn more, I am currently working for the Guild. This is last week's column, Brain Science, The Forgetting Curve, The Dirty Secret of Corporate Training. So an article we did a couple weeks ago, this came out. Feel free to take a look at it in Learning Solutions magazine, comment, any criticism, critique, I love it. It makes me work harder. We also have a Neuroscience Academy, and this is a non-commercial academy where we, and I'm in collaboration with a number of other academic scientists in the area of neuroscience, and we are putting together a series of tutorials, non-commercial, to try to spread the good word about how neuroscience works and how an understanding of the brain heuristics can make us all better teachers. So that's something else you can reach out to. Or if you have any interest in our products, I'm going to booster this. What the heck? Listen up. In an hour, you will have forgotten half of this. In a day, you will have forgotten 70% of it. We will, if you are interested in remembering what was discussed here, you just give me a business card or a piece of paper, and we will send you boosters over the next 7 to 10 days. I promise, totally non-commercial, but you will experience for yourself the power of having the message boosted over time and how you suddenly remember this session as you watch other sessions kind of fade into oblivion. If you're they just do. If you're interested in these slides or the academy, or if you want me to do I do a lot of consulting and presentations to companies. In any of those, what I'd ask is just leave me a business card or a piece of paper noting what I need. If you're going to give me a card or a piece of paper, you can give it to me or the gentleman in the back. We will reach out to you. Just put down your name, your company, email address, and then whatever on that list you might be interested in, we'll reach out to you. And if it's just interesting about getting more information on how to make videos, we can point you at all that kind of stuff. So again, if you pass either a business card with that information on it or just a piece of paper, and I'll be glad to reach out. Thank you, and may all your videos be interactive.